the idea of sport and physical activity in the first instance was probably disassociated from what the clinicians and the clinical partners were looking to deliver. And I think in the past, we within the sport physical activity world have maybe not quite communicated effectively what we could contribute to the clinical world. I think the perception wasn't negative, but I just don't think it was necessarily perceived as something that could help with some of the main priorities that they were facing. We have a GP referral scheme that works very well, and I think it delivers what people are looking for within that setting. The issue we probably found is or the issue I perceive, is it contributes to the health and well-being of those people who are already starting to consider that. Because setting, for instance, it's delivered in a leisure centre, in a gym or class setting. However, we wouldn't necessarily get those people who were put off from that setting. So what we've consequently tried to do is move our active lifestyle officers from the 5 leisure centres that we've got out into the GP settings. So there's a breakdown of those inhibitions about the anxiety of somebody who's not tuned into physical activity. They don't have to come to a leisure centre setting. They can have those assessments at somewhere they may feel more comfortable. And within those settings, what they'd have is a motivational interview. So again, the programme of activities that we'd be trying to give somebody would be less leisure centre based and more shaped around what the individual wanted. And I think that hopefully what we'll see is that will really help engage with those people who primarily, because of the very fact they're being referred, would not have been people who had been have a positive relationship with physical activity in the first place.
We looked at being able to provide the lifestyle coordinators in the evenings during GP extended hours. So just trying to make it as accessible as possible to identify what the patient might enjoy. Instead of that constant, all those images we all have of gyms and swimming pools and people running, actually just, what can you do? Incorporate more exercise into your everyday life, really.
What we're working on now is obviously collecting the evidence from having the referral scheme in a different setting to see how that stacks up with the evidence that we have on the current referral scheme. We know that we have a lot of people come through the referral scheme. We know that we have a higher than average retention on that, so something must be going well on that. But what we want to know is, how do we hit those people who are not quite there on the behaviour change model? They haven't quite got to the stage where they will willingly come forward and take part in that activity, as well as the hard evidence of retention and sustainability. It's also the sort of softer focus around what's your motivation to start with, how have we changed your behaviour, would you have even come in the first place? So we're starting to gather some of that information, which hopefully will help shape our service in the future going forward.
One of the key aspects was the evaluation that they had built in, a strong evaluation plan. And if we want to look at extending that in the future, we want to make sure that it has been evaluated effectively and we really understand the benefits. And one of the other things was the feedback from patients who had, there's the current exercise on referral programme, and there are quite high numbers of people who either start that, they're referred and they start it but they don't get to the end of it, or some of them are referred and they don't even make it to the beginning of it. And the team had evidence from those patients about why they hadn't completed, and that really informed part of this sort of different service. As a clinical commissioning group, we're split into 6 localities, and each of those localities has a locality plan with priorities, which is developed from the Health and Wellbeing Board, and also engagement with local people, local stakeholders. I think specifically in the New Forest area, we've got our demographics, we've got an ageing population, which is sort of 1.5 times nationally. We've got around 2/3 of people are overweight. We've got pockets of deprivation, and particularly we're quite a rural area. And then I think just from the point of view of services and anything else that's developed, looking at something, you know, sustainable, things that meet the needs of some of those groups, and also increasingly address maybe more than one priority. For the CCG and GPs, like many other people, very much sport. You know, there's leisure centres, there's a lot of organised activity, which I think can be quite far away from just physical activity for some people. Maybe what changed that was a couple of years ago. Dr. William Bird did a talk and he presented very effectively and convincingly, I think in a way that really resonated with clinicians. There were very clear charts and evidence about the impact on everyday exercise to a whole range of benefits, you know, physically and mentally. And that was picked up by a couple of our GPs who almost became champions, I think. A real understanding of what our priorities were. We'd worked together on a couple of pieces of work using the Sport England segmentation. So they demonstrated how some of those sectors were motivated, what put them off exercise, what could actually encourage people to exercise. That fitted very much with some of the target groups that we wanted to reach out to. So from the point of view of looking at ways of providing sport and physical activity alternatives, because the benefits are very well documented for a really wide range of, you know, benefits to the population. It's a case of just be open to what options there might be out there. There are opportunities to improve, try different ways of doing things, and it's just a case of being open to that, I think.